All right, good evening, VV Nation. My name is Ryan and welcome to the channel. Now, tonight's 6 p.m. presentation, there's no other subject to talk about this evening other than Bitcoin. That's right. Big news coming out the SEC yesterday evening, furthering that approval process when it comes to a Bitcoin spot ETF. Now, Bitcoin spot ETFs are not new to the world in general, as Canada has been doing this since 2021. As well, there are currently ETFs that track Bitcoin futures, which have done a pretty good job so far. I covered that in the short this morning. Now, when it comes to this presentation, I thought long and hard how to exactly go about this because this is such a hot topic and a diverse topic. Let's be honest here, half the people watching this will think Bitcoin is trash, let alone crypto in general. And as far as other investors watching this channel right now, do have a strong belief when it comes to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some of the other major coins out there. Now, that being said, my first disclaimer is I do not own Bitcoin, never have, not saying I never will, but I do own other coins such as Ethereum. Now, my first crypto experience first began shortly after the COVID epidemic started through my Robinhood account. Through that, my first crypto coin purchase ever would be Dogecoin, which I thought I was a genius, investing about $400, turning into just over $1,000, cashed out of the position. Thought I did well. However, if I would have held that position for just another 2 years, I would have quite a bit of money as that position went up 68,000%. Now, in tonight's presentation, for time purposes, I am going to keep this video under 10 minutes, or at least attempt to. Now, I will cover the history and origins of Bitcoin. As well, I will present some information to better make your decision when it comes to Bitcoin versus fiat currencies. That's right, its main competitor being fiat currency such as the US dollar, as well how interest rates affect crypto in general. With CPI data coming out hotter than expected, I'm not surprised at all that Bitcoin and cryptos are under pressure right now, along with the overbought scenario that they currently are in, just looking at the technicals from a trader's aspect. Now, we're going to take a few minutes, dive in a couple articles. As well, I'm going to jump into the VectorVest 7 system, show you some patterns and common themes that I'm looking at when it comes to crypto stock industry as a whole. As well, at the end of this presentation, I will give you my personal opinion when it comes to cryptocurrencies and the future of this digital currency. Now, the only logical place for me to begin when it comes to this story is starting with fiat currency and just the history of money in general. Now, that being said, right behind me, I just typed in origin of fiat currency. We can see here that commodity money is created from precious metals such as gold and silver, while representative money represents a claim on a commodity that can be redeemed. Now, China was the first country to use fiat currency around 1000 AD, and the currency then spread to countries around the world. Now, let's fast forward a couple thousand years. That's right, money's been around a long time. Now, the important thing to realize is just the growth of international trade and the adoption of Federal Reserves during that time period. And the next point I'm going to bring to you may be controversial in nature, but I'm here just to present the facts. Now, the biggest argument when it comes to Bitcoin is that it's not a tangible asset. You can't redeem it for a commodity as currency was intended in the first place. However, back in 1971, fiat money became the norm after US President Richard Nixon decided to abandon the gold standard in 1971. This meant that the US dollar was no longer convertible into gold, and two, the number of dollars printed was no longer directly tied to the amount of gold the government stored. Now, this paragraph I just read to you will be the biggest argument when it comes to Bitcoin and the dollar in general. Now it's time to get in the history of Bitcoin itself. Now, that being said, the precursor of Bitcoin is right here. It was called BitGold, created by Nick Szabo, one of the early cryptocurrency pioneers, is credited with creating the concepts that eventually led to the creation of Bitcoin. This concept was called BitGold and used many of the same blockchain techniques, such as peer-to-peer network, mining, a ledger or registry, and cryptography. Now, as we're at the origin of Bitcoin itself here, we can see it's first launched in January 2009 by a computer programmer or a group of programmers under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, this is what I find very interesting here, that this identity has actually never been verified. Actually, I've known this for quite some time. There's a lot of controversy and quite a few conspiracy theories when it comes to the origin of Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin was slow to gain traction. However, by 2011, there's a couple things I really want to point out that put Bitcoin on the map. Now, the growth and adoption of Bitcoin does have a dark history, so let's dive into that just for a moment here. As you can see, I did search the Silk Road. If you're not familiar with that, the Silk Road is actually an online forum a part of the dark web itself. So let's learn a little bit about this. It was launched in 2011 by its American founder, Ross Ulbricht. Now, as part of the dark web, Silk Road operated as a hidden service on the Tor network, allowing users to buy and sell products and services between each other anonymously. Just from that paragraph alone, you can see a shady background already forming when it comes to Bitcoin and the adoption of this cryptocurrency. Now, as we get closer to current day here, we can see that Bitcoin has emerged out of the shadows. There's a lot of news, a lot of adoption around the world when it comes to Bitcoin itself. Now, back in 2021, the president of El Salvador actually bet on Bitcoin adopting this cryptocurrency as a national investment. Now, I know he felt the pressure over the last 2 years as Bitcoin took a huge dip. However, that bet is paying off right now with an estimation of $13 million in profit as the Bitcoin ETF approval approached. Now, I realize a lot of people watching this video will be here in the United States, but I'm trying to give you an international perspective on Bitcoin as it's seen as a global currency, not just here in the States. Now, the next article I have dealing with, it comes to Venezuela. You can see the article right behind me, the title, as Venezuela's economy regresses, crypto fills the gap. Now, Venezuela has been under a lot of pressure in the hot seat right now due to US sanctions. So let's see how Bitcoin is taking effect in this economy. Now, the first point I have highlighted here is hyperinflation and US sanctions disrupt Venezuela's economy. Cryptocurrency is emerging as a way to provide services handled elsewhere by the traditional banking system. I do recall an article I saw a couple years ago that Venezuela actually tried to ban Bitcoin because of its competition directly to the national banking system of that country. Now, another point I found in this article here, that it protects wages from inflation and helps businesses manage cash flow in a quickly depreciating currency, according to interviews with crypto users and experts. That's correct. I believe in countries around the world where hyperinflation or just high inflation in general, cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin and Ethereum, do come out on top as it is easily transferable between nations. In addition to that, it is a hedge against falling currencies within those countries. Now, other than individuals, utilizing Bitcoin when it comes to battle against hyperinflation or mismanaged governments, political corruption, things of that nature around the world, we do see here that in the United States, a lot of big players are on the Bitcoin bandwagon as well. I have the list right here. We got, Bitwise, ARK, Invesco, iShares, VanEck, Franklin Bitcoin, Fidelity, Wisdom Tree, Valkyrie, Hashdex, and even Grayscale. So you can see that Bitcoin is gaining adoption. So if you're a Bitcoin naysayer, you can't ignore the fact that there's a lot of individuals and institutions jumping on the bandwagon when it comes to Bitcoin and the blockchain technology as a whole. So now let's take a look at Bitcoin. You can see I'm on TradingView here. We got data going back to 2012, relatively flat when it comes to its trading here. Obviously, we would all have loved to get into Bitcoin back in the early days when it was under $1,000. You can see that the move to the upside really didn't start to occur until 2017 following. After that, you can see the crypto winter here where Bitcoin was relatively flat. If you're not familiar with crypto winners or Bitcoin winners, typically crypto has moved in cycles. You can see quick jumps here while losing a lot of that momentum and relatively flat action. That's known as the winter itself. Now, right at the beginning of COVID here with the Federal Reserves around the world announcing near zero interest rates due to COVID concerns, you see Bitcoin on the rise, taking advantage of that easy money. And in addition, investors making riskier bets. That's why I essentially do feel that interest rates in Bitcoin do have somewhat of a correlation here. Now, as we move forward into 2024, one of the best case scenarios for Bitcoin is interest rate cuts. Now, as we get to 2022 at its peak here, just over $60,000 per coin, you can see with the rise of interest rates throughout 2022, Bitcoin on a steep decline here. However, since the second half of 2023, with interest rates relatively flat, in addition to that, with the news of this Bitcoin ETF, you can see Bitcoin making a comeback here. So to go over some of the stats, we can see that the market capitalization of Bitcoin right now is just under $1 trillion, which, to be honest, puts it in the category of the Magnificent Seven that we've talked about on this channel quite some time now. You can see the all-time high here at 69,000. The circulating supply, just under $20 million, while the max supply is at 21 million. So now let's jump into the VectorVest 7 software, and I'm going to show you the crypto industry as a whole. Now that we're in the VectorVest 7 software, up here I have a list of crypto stocks. This is the industry itself. So in the VectorVest database, we actually have 21 entities here between stocks and ETFs that go along with crypto, being Bitcoin, the others. So let's take a look at the industry graph here in the VectorVest 7 system over the last 12 months here. You can see price action on the rise over the last 12 months here. However, a lot of volatility in between, so just keep that in mind. In addition, if we look at the value here, we only value this space currently at $2.56 while it's trading at $4.85 collectively. Now down below, we do have RT, or relative timing here, looking at the short-term price trend and the magnitude of that short-term price trend. We can see RT on the rise in anticipation of that Bitcoin spot ETF. However, since hitting its high at $7.14, you can see a steep retracement here, bringing the RT back in unfavorable territory right now, with that short-term price trend currently down and the rating sitting at 0.94. As well, we have our earnings per share, which is currently negative here. You can see over the last 12 months, EPS has been negative. So nothing positive when it comes to its forecasted earnings. And even look at the growth rate in earnings here, it still sits at negative 4%. So this information in hand and utilizing the VectorVest 7 system, I can clearly see this being a very speculative and volatile space and not suitable for more conservative investing. Now, for those sticking to the end of this presentation, this is where we're actually really going to get into the gritty of Bitcoin and the US dollar. The article right behind me, this came out just a day ago. This was announced by USA Today. Our national debt has topped $34 trillion, and does anyone actually have the guts to fix it? Now, let's be honest, the biggest argument when it comes to Bitcoin and owning Bitcoin and having belief in the currency itself is that it's backed by nothing. Well, so is the US dollar when we come to think about it. Since the 1970s, as I mentioned in the article before, it is only backed by the full faith of the United States government. However, I do see mismanagement when it comes to the United States government on a physical responsibility level. You can see here the national US debt just ticking up. I did confirm this number. That's why I did mention the USA Today story. I did look at other articles. It is at $34 trillion. I looked at some of these other numbers as well, just to verify them. I think this background's pretty cool. If you've never been here before, it's the usdebtclock.org. These numbers did look pretty accurate. Now, my biggest concern here is the US federal debt to GDP ratio. We can see back in the 1960s hovering just above 50% here. As we progress through time, we can see by 2000, this was almost 60%. However, now look at this number, 122%. Now, I did just mention several scenarios before, one being Venezuela and El Salvador, where countries become mismanaged and the rise of Bitcoin to hedge hyperinflation, thus competing with the national banking system. Now, we have reached the end of this presentation. Now, I hope you thought this was informative. I just wanted to give you a true and genuine opinion of mine when it comes to Bitcoin and the importance of this currency on an international scale. Now, we covered a lot of stories. I went into the software. I showed you the concern I had with the US dollar and the US government as a whole right now due to our debt issues. Now, there's a lot more I could have covered on this video. And now this video does get a lot of views, a lot of likes. I'll have to gauge from VV Nation itself if I'll do a follow-up story. However, now is the time for my personal opinion when it comes to Bitcoin. I do see Bitcoin as a vital necessity when it comes to international trade as our economies become more intertwined and a lot of countries essentially want to get off the US dollar as being the standard. So now that brings me to the BRIC nations here and the adoption of Saudi Arabia as of the beginning of this year. Now, the strength in the dollar grew after we got off the gold standard, essentially because we utilized it as the trade standard for oil itself. Now, if that situation ever changes, I do see potential problems if that arises when it comes to the US dollar. As far as longevity of Bitcoin, I don't see it going anywhere at this time. However, I do see it in an overbought situation with all this news around the Bitcoin ETF itself. So I do see better buying opportunities appearing in the future. However, as I mentioned before, interest rates really do affect the price of Bitcoin, as we have seen a correlation between the two since its adoption in 2009. Now, I'm not surprised that the origins of Bitcoin come out of the international financial crisis started back in 2008. So this all being said, I am bullish on Bitcoin. However, now is not the best time to be buying Bitcoin as I see opportunities in the future. I will make videos on those if this is a topic that you are interested in. Now, I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. I know it's been longer than normal. I just had a lot to say when it comes to this topic. Now, if you did enjoy this presentation, you found this information informative when making financial decisions in the future, don't forget that subscribe button and like this content so that way I can get your feedback and produce more in the future. Now, again, my name is Ryan, Senior Instructor here at VectorVest. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
Hey VV Nation, our next free VectorVest portfolio challenge is about to kick off. Folks, you want to learn how to remove bad stocks from your portfolio and know which are the best stocks to buy, and better yet, to know when to buy them? Let me break it down for you real quick. We're going to teach you how to become an expert at stock analysis. We're going to help you to know when to sell and weed out the bad stocks from your portfolio. We're going to teach you when to buy and put the probability on your side. We're going to help you to know what to buy and how to cherry pick great candidates. And one last thing, to simplify your day with a 10-minute management plan. Folks, you don't want to miss this. It is free. Go to www.vectorvest.com/PC, and you want to do it now.